Throughout history, infamous Mexican cartels such as the Sinaloa, Beltran Leyva, and Los Zetas have unleashed terror upon Mexico and its people. Their pursuit of wealth, territory, and power knows no bounds, and they employ brutal violence and unimaginable torture as their weapons of choice. The streets of Mexico have been stained crimson with the blood of innocent victims who fall into the clutches of these ruthless cartel members. They are kidnapped, subjected to unspeakable horrors, and endure unimaginable suffering. This video will delve into the most barbaric and insane torture methods Mexican cartels employ. Fair warning, it's not for the faint of heart. Let's start with el guiso, or the stew. When you think of stew, you probably envision a delicious meal. But the stew prepared by members of the Mexican cartels is anything but appetizing. To create this nightmarish concoction, a massive barrel is filled with water and concentrated sulfuric acid, transforming it into a boiling cauldron of dangerously hot liquid. Once the deadly mixture is ready, victims are submerged in it while still able to breathe. The excruciating pain they experience is beyond comprehension, leading to a slow and agonizing death. Given that this torture technique involves cooking people alive, it's no wonder it's called the stew, or el guiso. While the original creator of this monstrous method remains unknown, certain cartel members have become infamous for employing el guiso with chilling regularity. Santiago Meza Lopez, a former Sinaloa cartel member. In 2009, Santiago was apprehended and confessed to the chilling exterminations and disposal of over 240 individuals during his time in the cartel. Infamously known on the streets as El Pozoleo, or the stew maker, Santiago earned his grim nickname due to his involvement in cooking people alive for the cartels. It's important to note that Santiago claimed he carried out these horrific acts under the orders of higher-ranking cartel officials, leaving us with lingering questions about accountability and the depths of depravity within these organizations. Another prominent figure who favored the gruesome stew method was Miguel Trevino, the leader of Los Zetas. Known as 40, Trevino quickly established himself as a cruel and bloodthirsty psychopath upon assuming leadership of the cartel. Unsurprisingly, he turned to using el guiso as a means of terrorizing his enemies and maintaining control. Now, let's move on to another torture technique these cartels employ: waterboarding. While waterboarding has a historical background dating back to the Spanish Inquisition, the Mexican cartels have added their deadly twist to this method. Waterboarding involves pouring water onto a cloth placed over the face of the captive, restricting their breathing and inducing the sensation of drowning. The victims endure immense pain and oxygen deprivation, leading to brain damage, lung damage, and psychological trauma caused by this barbaric practice. Waterboarding is a cruel method that induces the horrifying sensation of drowning, but the cartels decided to escalate the torment by inflicting additional pain. They created a variation known as huacanazo. Instead of using plain water, they substituted it with carbonated water, often laced with fiery hot chili peppers. The water is poured intermittently, prolonging the agony and preventing immediate death. However, if poured continuously, it leads to a horrifying demise known as fixation or dry death. Regarding high-ranking cartel members, their ill-gotten wealth isn't just limited to drugs and money. They have a penchant for acquiring exotic and dangerous wildlife, showcasing their power through toothy companions. These fearsome pets, such as tigers, panthers, jaguars, and lions, aren't merely for show. Unfortunately, victims of the cartels have been thrown into enclosures teeming with these starving beasts. The terrified captives have moments to plead for their lives before being torn apart by the ferocious predators. One notorious Zeta drug lord, Z3, possessed these wild pets and kept them intentionally hungry, eagerly anticipating their victims for a gruesome feast. The sadistic pleasure derived from watching the carnage was his twisted satisfaction. It's difficult to comprehend the level of sadism that exists within these cartel leaders. Face peeling, a gruesome form of torture that traces back to 800 BC, has unfortunately found a chilling resurgence recently. This horrifying practice has been adopted by bloodthirsty Mexican cartels, who employ it for various purposes. Initially, the act of skinning victims was carried out on deceased members of rival cartels, serving as a macabre display of utter disregard. Notably, El Chapo made headlines in 2010 when he utilized this torture technique, reportedly beheading a rival cartel member with a chainsaw, removing the victim's face and leaving it grotesquely stitched onto a ball. Recent reports reveal that face peeling is not limited to the deceased. Cartel members employ special or crude knives to slowly strip the skin from their victims' arms, chest, legs, and even their faces. The victims endure excruciating pain, their anguished screams echoing in the air. Through practice and repetition, these cartel members have become disturbingly skilled at carrying out this cruel act, somehow managing to keep their victims alive for as long as possible. The individuals responsible for inflicting such torture within the cartels reserve this punishment for the most heinous offenders, including members of rival cartels, double agents, and those who dare to steal from the criminal organization. Unquestionably, peeling faces and skinning victims alive are among the methods employed by these cartels to maintain their reign of terror in Mexico. By mutilating their victims and displaying grisly results, the cartels aim to showcase their unbridled ferocity. The perpetrators employ heavy, sharp blades such as machetes, butcher knives, hatchets, and sometimes even ordinary kitchen knives to execute this gruesome act. To intensify the agony, cartel members inject the victims with various drugs. These drugs affect the central nervous system, keeping the victims awake throughout the process without allowing them to slip into unconsciousness. The torturers skillfully avoid cutting too close to vital organs, ensuring that the victim remains in agonizing pain for an extended period without succumbing to fatal bleeding. The combination of blood loss, infections, and the shock induced by extreme pain creates a tormenting cocktail that brings the tortured soul to death. One method employed by cartels is the use of insane psychological torture. Victims are confined to small claustrophobic rooms with limited access to food and water, instilling a constant sense of fear. But this is just the tip of the iceberg. The cartels establish and enforce threats, such as losing a finger daily for the slightest reason. These threats persist until the victim has no fingers remaining, leaving them with nothing but the fear of what is yet to come. And rest assured, something worse always follows. The criminal organization employs any means necessary to convince the victims of their impending demise should they defy their captors. Gouging out eyes, breaking bones, removing ears, and employing gruesome torture methods instills fear and exerts the drug kingpin's power of intimidation. This power is vital for their dominance in the ruthless hierarchy of the criminal underworld. What makes the Mexican cartels even more terrifying is that they not only require intimidation tactics to control the public and intimidate their rivals, but also derive pleasure from inflicting such terror. This becomes evident in the chilling case of a woman kidnapped by the Knights Templar cartel. She was forced to witness her husband burned alive with a blowtorch, followed by his decapitation and dismemberment. Shortly after, the gang members brought in 4 more victims, subjecting them to the same gruesome fate. The traumatized woman was forced to watch the heinous acts unfold throughout the ordeal. The underworld perpetrators then callously discarded the victim's remains into a ditch and proceeded to assault the already shattered woman sexually. As a final act of cruelty, they decided to release her, understanding that the lingering psychological torment would cause her more pain than ending her life. The cartel's use of psychological manipulation and extreme violence demonstrates their unfathomable capacity for cruelty, ensuring their dominance and perpetuating an atmosphere of fear that leaves their victims scarred for life. While not fitting the traditional mold of torture, the cartel kitchens hold a vital and deeply disturbing role in the ruthless campaign waged by Mexican cartels on the streets. These kitchens deserve attention due to the gruesome scenes they witness. In a typical cartel kitchen, one would find bloodied handprints adorning the walls, discarded and soiled clothing, an assortment of blades, and chilling piles of bones stacked atop a large mound of ashes. Such was the haunting scene at La Galleria Ranch in northern Veracruz, just one of the 12 known cartel kitchens in the region. Mexican authorities have been confronted with the daunting task of sifting through mountains of human bone fragments, teeth, nails, and more to identify the hundreds of victims who have suffered torture and death within these kitchens. La Galleria Kitchen, under the control of the notorious Los Zetas since 2011, served as the site for a range of brutal acts, including the incineration of victims and the disturbing practice known as tuzakahuil, which translates to cook humans. Grisly locations like La Galleria served as torture for the innocent public, fueling rumors of a place where one meets death. For a victim unfortunate enough to find themselves within one of these kitchens, they endure psychological torture even before the physical torment begins. The ghastly sights and the piercing sounds of fellow victims screaming in agony are enough to shatter the spirits of even the strongest-hearted individuals, laying the groundwork for the horrors ahead. These video links on your screen will take you on a journey of untold crime stories that will shake you to the core.